Welcome to God's Rescue and Restoration Plan, Session 3, The Fall of Man, the Rescue Begins. We're going to start with the chart that we ended the last session with that shows the 7 days in Genesis 1 where God is putting back together his damaged universe, his kingdom, because of the catastrophic event between verses 1 and 2 of chapter 1. So we're going to pick up the record in about day 6, about mankind, because that's what we're going to focus on today. Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, and God blessed them, and God said to them, he's talking to Adam and Eve, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. So have babies, increase the population, fill the earth, subdue it, bring it into subjection, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that creeps upon the earth. Dominion was given to Adam and Eve. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant seeding for seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree that bears fruit yielding seed. They will be food for you. So man is going to eat, have a vegetarian diet, eating plant material. And then to every animal of the earth and to every bird of the heavens, to everything that creeps on the ground in which is living soul, I've given every green plant for food. And it was so. So the animals aren't going to be eating each other. They're going to be eating vegetation as well. So Genesis 1:31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the 6th day. He was very happy about everything that had been done. Chapter 2, verse 1, and the heavens and the earth were finished with everything that was in them. By or on the 7th day, God finished his work that he had done, and he ceased on the 7th day from all his work that he had done. And God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he ceased from all his work that creating God had done. So he's finished, he's resting, it's over, it's complete. So before we continue on, I want to show you the format that we'll be using going forward in these sessions. We're basically going to build a timeline of events. And you see in your screen there, you see a red square, a rectangle that has BC in it, the red BC, and then next to it is a bluish AD box. BC stands for before Christ, so the years that are counting down to 0, whereas the AD is after birth and it's counting upward from 0. So the two meet in the middle, so to speak, and there is actually no 0 year. The last year of BC is 1, and the very next year is 1 AD. So that's the way timelines work. So we're going to start in the year 3960 BC, which is about 6,000 years ago. And what we're going to be doing as we go through these sessions is looking at 1,000-year chunks of time and see and look within those 1,000 years in the Bible what records are appropriate for us to study a little bit so that we can follow our topic through the Bible and learn some things. So 1,000 years from 3960 would be 2960. So that's the span of time we're working on now. Some of these will have not that many events that we look at in the 1,000 years, and others will be loaded. So by the time we get done with this, there's going to be a lot of things loaded on your screen or on your timeline, and it'll be, I think, a useful tool for you to have. So Yahweh God had planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Yahweh God had made every kind of tree that's pleasant to the sight and good for food to spring up from the ground, and the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that establishes Eden, Eden, the Garden of Eden, Garden of Delight, God's bountiful garden made for man, and man is in it now. And that is something we call paradise. Adam and Eve are there, we believe, in the year 3961 BC. Now, just to be clear, dating in biblical times is very challenging. It's a very challenging topic. well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds and hundreds of scholars have tried it, probably thousands over the history and many, many centuries. And it's just hard because there's so many calendars involved. For example, there's solar calendars, there's lunar calendars, there's blended calendars, there's different times, different nations, and different calendars have their year start at a different time of year. So you got to figure out that. And different countries, different nations over time have handled birthdays and the beginning of the reigns of kings at different ways, in different ways. So it's hard to figure out, it's hard to follow. Many scholars give up and say, there's no way you can make a timeline out of this because there's just too many mistakes. Other scholars have come a lot closer to figuring out, and I think more recently, maybe the last, I don't know, last 100 years or so, they've gotten much better. And a lot of that's because of better information too. And at times, there are events that can be tagged to the biblical record. So, for example, if there was something in the sky, like a solar eclipse or something like that, the astronomers can pinpoint exactly when that was and exactly where in the world it could have been seen. And so, if that's recorded in the Bible in some way or referenced, then that becomes a good benchmark, a good flag that says, we know what this date was, now we can work forwards or backwards from that. Sometimes secular history has very well documented historical events that also are recorded in the Bible. And if that's the case, then again, we have a really good tie-in to time, and that helps sort out and benchmark against the material that is just in the biblical record, which is most of it. The ones tied to history, the ones tied to astronomy are much, much fewer. There just aren't that many, but there's some, and they're important, I think. So anyway, a lot of attempts have been tried. I sorted through some of them and landed on John Schoenheit's chronology. It's very good. It's consistent actually with some of the others that are conservative scholars, I think. But at any rate, and it appears to be fitting history really well too, so that's good. So using his, which also is in the REV online forum, you can look at things there too. But we're going to go with that. And 3961 BC is when paradise was. That's when Adam arrived on the scene, so to speak. So let's go forward. Verse 15, Yahweh God took the man, put him into the Garden of Eden to work it and to care for it. He had a job, and that's typical. It's fun to work. It keeps us busy, right? So he had a job. He had dominion. He had things to do. The garden wasn't going to take care of itself. He needed to tend it, work it, take care of it. So he did. And Yahweh God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may eat, yes, eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you must not eat of it, for in the day that you eat of it you will die, yes, die. Now, let's pause and ask the question, why is it that this translation is saying eat, yes, eat, and die, yes, die? Why not just say eat once or say die once? Well, the reason is in the text, in the original text, both words were there both times. So the text reads, you may eat, eat, or you will die, die. Two in a row. Well, why did God talk like that? He did it to make a point, to draw attention to this, to make sure we pay attention to it, that we see it, that we hear it, that we understand there is a choice and it's important. The English translators have decided that it's a little bit easier if you put the word yes in between the two, and it reads pretty nice and you get the point. For example, every tree of the garden you may eat, yes, eat. But the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you must not eat of it, for in the day that you eat of it, you will die, yes, die. And that catches your attention. And it would have caught their attention as well. Well, chapter 3, verse 1, the serpent was more crafty than any animal of the field that Yahweh God had made. So he wasn't an animal. We know he was a spirit being. He was a cherub. He was a powerful one and had a great deal of authority, but he rebelled against God and was thrown to earth with a third of the angels. And now here he is. So he's crafty. That means he's sneaky, he's manipulative, he's sly, and always with evil intent. He's always working the conversation, sprinkling enough truth in it that it's plausible, it's believable, but still has error in it. And then he starts hooking people, and before you know it, you're starting to believe the lie. And that's the way he is. He's very crafty, he's very good at that. And so we always have to be careful, and we watch him at work here. He said to the woman, "Has God really said you must not eat of the tree of the garden?" Is that what he really said? That you not to eat of any tree of the garden? And so, it's not quite what he said. She's thinking about it, and she says to the serpent, "Well, of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you must not eat from it, neither must you touch it, lest you die." Well, I don't remember him saying anything about touching it, but did say don't eat it. But he didn't say lest you die. Lest is sort of a maybe. Maybe you die. He didn't say that. He said die, yes, die. It was very emphatic. So she's starting to waffle, getting a little fuzzy in her head about this, and it's going to lead her down the path. And the serpent said to the woman, "No, no, no. You will not die, yes, die. For God knows that in the day you eat in your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Boy, you're going to be really smart. And he just contradicted God completely. He said, "No, you're not going to die, yes, die." But God said you were. And she didn't remember very well, did she? Verse 6, when the woman saw that the tree was good, so she's checking it out. She's scouting it more carefully. She's considering it. She's doing her research now. She looks at the tree. She saw it's good for food. Check. And that it was a delight to the eyes. It was beautiful, looked wonderful. Check. And that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. Well, it has great benefit then. Check. She took of its fruit and ate, and she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. And when they did that, they literally picked devil over God. Disobeyed God, mankind fell. That, at that moment, was the fall of mankind. Verse 7, then the eyes of both of them were opened, and now they are perceiving things in ways they never have before. Their eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. So they made something for themselves. They knew they were naked that way, but also it means they were crafty. They were taking on the characteristics of the serpent. They were getting sly and sneaky. And at the end of the day, at the end of the afternoon, the heat's diminished and a nice cool breeze comes as a great time to take a walk. And they heard the sound of Yahweh God walking around in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. So he's taking a walk, could hear his footsteps, could hear the leaves rustle maybe, but they could hear him. They could hear the sound. And you would think if God came, you would just run out and say, "Hello, I'm so glad I can see you. I'm so glad you're willing to talk to me, and maybe we can learn something." And you know, it'd be a wonderful time, but not this time. The man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh God among the trees of the garden. They went and hid. And then Yahweh God called to the man. He said, "Where are you? Adam, where are you at?" And the man said, "Well, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." I kind of think he was afraid because God said if he disobeyed him and ate that fruit, he was going to die, yes, die. And he probably didn't want to die. And he probably was afraid because of what's this going to be like? What's going to happen? But his excuse was, "I'm naked. I don't want to show myself naked." So I hid myself. And God said, "Well, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" And the man said, "The woman who you gave to be with me, that woman you gave me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate it." And Yahweh God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent, he's so sneaky and he tricked me, he deceived me, and I ate." So they did both confess that they ate, that they disobeyed. It was not a glowing confession there, not without dress, but they did. They got there. So Yahweh God turns to the serpent, the devil, and says, "Because you have done this, you are cursed above all livestock and above every animal of the field." Again, that does not make him an animal of the field. It just means he's really low on the totem pole. He's below the animals. He's below the livestock. He's below, everything, the bugs. He's at the bottom. On your belly, you will go. You can't get any lower than that. On your belly, you will go and you will eat dust all the days of your life. Eat my dust. I remember a movie when I was growing up, kind of a black and white film this is a long, long time ago, so memory's kind of vague. But I can remember this scene where a king's on his throne in his throne room. It's black and white, uh, vintage film. And the throne is on a little stage. So he's on his stage, and the doors of the throne room burst open. The soldiers bring in this low life scum. He's all tattered and rags, and he's dirty, and you can see that he's just a bad apple. And they throw him down on the ground in front of the platform, and he just squirms around. He won't get up. Or on his knees. He's just squirming around, wiggling around on the ground, and looking up at the king, trying to see what he's going to say. He knows he's in trouble, and he really can't do anything about it. And that's what I think of every time I read this. On your belly you will go, just squirming. That's the real place for the devil. He doesn't act like that. He's a great liar, and he sets himself up, and he is a formidable foe. But his real status is on his belly, as low as you can go, eating dust all the days of his life. I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. So the seed of the woman is referring to progeny. So she'll have babies, and then they'll have babies. So there'll be generations of people. And at some point in time in the future, he is going to show up. The text refers to this, or is stated in a way that it's a single man, not a group, not a gang, not a nation. It's he, a person, a man is going to show up that will strike the serpent's head, and you, the serpent, will strike his heel. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be battle. They're both going to hurt each other, but it's coming, and he's going to strike his head. To the woman, he said, "I will increase, yes, increase." There's that figure again, saying the same word twice in a row. "I will increase, yes, increase your pain and toil in childbirth. In pain and toil, you will bear children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." The desire for women and men to women is, you would expect that, but this is talking about a little more than that, where the woman wants her man so bad that she won't leave him even though she's getting hurt by it. And we see this in our culture, we see this in society, battered women all the time. And why do you go back to your husband? Well, because I love him and he's my man. But you shouldn't do that. But she does, and then she comes back, and now she's got a black eye, a chipped tooth. Says, we said, why are you going back? Well, it was kind of my fault. He's going to get over. He's going to get better. And she goes back again, and it's just not right. It's not sound thinking, but that desire to be with a man is really strong, and it's hard, and it's stronger than what it should be. Same thing with the man. The man takes a woman and he beats her, he abuses her, maybe he turns her into a slave practically for him to do everything that is bid and call. And it's just not, that just shouldn't be that way. It's over the top. It isn't what God intended at all. He intended a much better relationship than that. And we as Christians can rise above it today. We have enough Bible. We know that that's not right. So we train our mind and require ourselves to behave in a way that's consistent with the way Christ would behave. And he wouldn't do that, would he? So we follow that lead, and we become Christ-like in and execute or behave in a way that's consistent with it. So we can overcome this, and we do. To Adam, he turns his attention now to Adam, and he said, because you have listened to your wife's voice instead of me, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, you must not eat of it, cursed is the ground because of you. Not because God is going to curse it, but because the devil's going to mess with it and injure it. It's not going to be productive soil like the garden is. It's going to be less productive, less and less. So in pain and toil, you will eat from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, new kinds of plants that are prickly and hurt, maybe some that will damage your skin. And you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face, you will eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you will return. So there are several implications and consequences of this that I want to point out. First of all, sin, when Adam and Eve sinned, their bodies changed biologically. Something happened to them physically. I don't know if a gene change, a chromosome, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I do not know. I do know that biologically they changed, and that change is passed on to children. And then their children pass it on to the next generation of children, and on it goes. And we have it in us. Every person has sin nature, something physical within our bodies that we call the sin nature caused by the fall of Adam. That's why when we look, well, first at Genesis 2:17, he said, in the day you eat of it, you will die. Yes, die. It's death. The wages of sin are death. And Adam sinned. The wages of sin is death. So he has death in him. That's why in Romans 5:14 it says, nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses and on, even over those who did not sin in a similar way to the transgression of Adam, who's a type of the coming one. Death reigned from Adam to Moses. Why? Because of the sin nature that Adam had. And he passes it on to the children, and they pass it on to their children. It's in human beings. All human beings have it. 1 Corinthians 15 says, for just as in Adam, all die. Why do all die from Adam? Because we have that sin nature, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can't have a surgery to remove it. There's no pill to take care of it, no medicine. It's part of us. It's in our biology, and we keep passing it along, and there's nothing we can do about it. Not a thing. Only God can figure out something about that. And he did. There was a transfer of authority at the time of this as well. So Adam had dominion over the world and within the world. But when he picked the devil over God, the devil then got the dominion. He took it, and he has it. And this is confirmed in Luke chapter 4, where the devil is testing and tempting Jesus. So he, the devil, led him, Jesus, up and showed him all the kingdoms of the inhabited world in a moment of time. Look, over there's Rome. Look, over there is Africa. Look, here's Israel, right? Hey, look behind us. There's China and India. A lot of stuff going on in the inhabited world. And guess what? I'll give you all this authority, all that glory, for that's all been handed to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. That's right. And you know what? If that was not true, if he did not actually have that to give, it wouldn't have been a temptation at all. Nothing would be tempting about that. It's just a hollow promise that's very obvious that it's hollow. But it's true. That's why it was a temptation. In 1 John 5:19, it says, we know that we are God and the whole world lies in the power of the wicked one. We know that. It's got changed then. It was that way in the time of Jesus, and it's that way now. The whole world lies in the power of the wicked one. And that's why it's so terrible in the world. So many bad things happen and are happening. Terrible difficulties and challenges and horrors. because it's the wicked one that has the power of it. And lastly, want to point out that Adam and Eve had to move. They had to leave paradise. They were escorted out, actually. Yahweh God in 3:22, Yahweh God says, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil." Now, and he's talking to spirit beings here, other spirit beings. That's who he's talking to. They're like us. Man's become like one of us, knowing good and evil now, so that he does not reach out his hand and also take the tree of life and eat and live forever. We got to do something. So Yahweh God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. So he drove out the man, and east of the Garden of Eden, he stationed the cherubim and the flaming sword that was turning in every direction to guard the way to the tree of life. No longer is there entry to paradise. It's gone, it's disappeared, it's out of the question. It is not available at all. That's it. It's out. Now, I want to go back to Genesis 3:15 for a bit and point out some things. This is where it says, "I will put hostility between you and the woman." He's talking to the serpent, and between your seed and her seed, their progeny. So the devil's people is always at odds with God's people, and God's people are always at odds with the devil's people. It's been like that ever since. But specifically, a man, an individual will strike your head one day in the future. A man's coming, he's going to strike your head and you will strike his heel. And that refers to the promise of the Messiah, the anointed one. There's a man coming who God's anointed for a purpose. And part of that purpose is he's going to strike your head and you'll strike his heel. There'll be a battle. Both will get hurt, but he's coming. And this is the promise of it. Not many details, but he's coming. He announces there's someone coming. All right. Well, this is an unconditional promise. It's not conditional, it's unconditional. A conditional promise, he would have said something like, "I'm going to send, he will strike your head, you will strike his heel, as long as Adam doesn't mess up anymore." Something like that. That's a condition. Adam messing up or not messing up is a condition for him following through. But there's nothing like that. This is just a plain statement of fact. It's a promise. Look, he will strike your head and you will strike his heel. That says it's going to happen. There's no conditions. Doesn't matter what Adam and Eve do or don't do. Doesn't matter what the devil does or doesn't do. Doesn't matter what other people do or don't do. He is going to show up. So, unconditional promise. Now, unconditional promises and unconditional covenants, they provide structure and direction for God's plan. They help inform us of what God's plan is. If he says, without condition, this is going to happen, then we know that's part of the plan. That's part of his plan. This is going to happen. This is direction that we're going. Now we know what direction. We know where we're headed. We don't know the details of getting there, but we know that's where we're headed and we're going to arrive at some point. Here we go. So now we are better informed about what God's plan is. So as we go through these future sessions and build out our timeline here, we're going to be looking at things like that to notice unconditional promises or covenants that help inform us of what's coming and what God's plan is and helps provide direction. His covenants allow him and provide the opportunity for him to be involved in history and to change or to direct things in the right direction so that his decrees are fulfilled. Sometimes somebody may need a prophet to go and give him some information, and that happens. Sometimes he may need to give revelation or dream or something like that to somebody to give them information, to give them guidance. Sometime he may need to send an angel to fight a battle so that the direction keeps going, like what we saw in the last session. Angel came in overnight, the Syrian army killed 185,000 soldiers overnight. And then they decided it's time to go home. Yeah, so he can do things and he does do things. He makes sure that his promises come true, but he never violates free will. It's really something. Now, let's take a look and review at what has happened what we've covered. God placed man in paradise and gave a choice to them to obey or disobey. And it's always free will with God. You always have a choice. He lets you know what the downside is if you choose bad and what the upside is when you choose well. So it's there to know, but you get to choose and you can walk away from God if you want to. You can. It's your choice, but there's consequences. Sin always has consequences, some kind, and the consequence lingers after forgiveness is given many times. The serpent lies to them and gets Adam and Eve to disobey God. God comes to the garden. Adam and Eve are hiding. Adam and Eve, though, come out and they confess their sin reluctantly, but they did confess it. God describes the consequences of their disobedience. He may forgive them, but the consequences are still there and they're severe. And he explains them for Satan, the women, and men. Adam's free will choice of Satan over God delivers control of the earth to Satan. Paradise no longer available, and the nature of the earth, animals, and mankind are damaged forever. Adam's rejection of God causes mankind's inherent sin nature, which passes to progeny, on and on through the generations. It can only be fixed by God's rescue. And just think of that. He's got to do it by free will. It was hard enough when he just had Adam and Eve and they were sinless. And it didn't work for them. Made the wrong choice. Well, now everybody has sin nature. Everybody's disobedient. Everybody's against God, so to speak. They're by nature conflicting. And somehow he's got to get enough of them at the right time to say, yes, I'll go with you, God, and make the right choices so that his plan is indeed fulfilled. And that's something only God could figure out, I think. And he did. God introduces his rescue plan. So God begins to implement his rescue plan for mankind. He's going to rescue man, and he's also going to restore paradise because he wants to do both. He needs to rescue man and he wants to restore the earth to paradise. So he's going to accommodate both in his plan, and he starts. And the devil starts working to stop it, doing what he can to stop it. And I'm telling you, that is a epic battle. It's an epic battle for mankind, and it started right there. It is still raging today. It is very intense. It is spiritual warfare, and we are part of it, whether we like it or not. We might think we're bystanders, but you're still in it. You are in this raging battle, and you can decide to participate for God. And that's what we want to do. We participate by learning his word and learning his will and knowing and finding out what we can do to help. What strengths do I have? How can I help God? How can I help contribute to the well-being of the body of Christ? And that's what we do. And when we do that, we're helping God in this battle. We're helping his agenda to move forward. And that's a great, wonderful thing. Well, they've been kicked out of the paradise. Paradise is gone. There I am. There they are in their loincloths. And God, you just think how hurtful that was to God, that here he put the whole universe together in a way that supported Earth, that allowed him to populate, or to put, not populate, but put man and Eve, Adam and Eve in the Bible, or in the earth, on the earth, set them in paradise, gave them dominion. Everything is upside from here. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful place, wonderful life. And yet, despite all that, they chose the devil. How that must have hurt his heart. And yet, despite that, what does he do? He looks at him and says, these guys need some clothes. He made tunics of skin for Adam and for his wife and clothed them. What a wonderful, touching thing to do. But it's more than that. He made tunics of skin. What skin? It had to be animal skin. That's where skin would come from, as an animal. And that meant the animal was sacrificed. The animal was killed. And his skin provided the fabric, if you will, the textile for a tunic for Adam and for Eve. He clothed them with it. So the skin of the animal, the hide of the animal who was sacrificed and bled, covers the sin, Adam and Eve. God is introducing the concept of substitution sacrifice, and that is such an important concept for our rescue. It's really, really important. And there it is, right there in Genesis 3. He's already talking about it. Later on, one of the son of Adam and Eve, Abel, brought some of the firstborn of his flock and of its fat. So the best parts, all the good parts, he offered to God. He held nothing back. It was all for God. And God respected Abel and his offering. So this uh, duty or this sacrifice is catching on. This procedure, this process, this worship, if you will, this honoring of God is happening, and it's now in that second generation, and Abel is doing that. And it becomes very clear that it's becoming widespread and it's used, and we'll see that develop all the way through. And so there you go. I thought that was kind of neat, and it's the firstborn of his flock, which kind of always makes me think of the Lamb of God, Jesus being the firstborn of God, and that's pretty cool. That symbolism is there, I think. And then after 930 years, Adam dies, and in the year 3031, and that wraps up that 1,000 years for us. So let's quickly go over the summary of concepts we hit. Disobedience causes catastrophic consequences to mankind and paradise. God introduces his plan to rescue and redeem mankind and restore paradise. A Messiah is needed and will come and will contest the serpent. Unconditional promise by God, which carries forward in time. It always carries forward until it's fulfilled. Confession of sin by mankind starts, and the concept of substitution sacrifice begins. And Satan works to get all of mankind into a permanent, unredeemable state and damage the earth. He wants to get mankind to the point that they are beyond rescue, that even God can't rescue them. And that's what he starts trying to do. And that is the end of our session. Next time, session 4, we are going to be looking at the Rainbow Covenant. So thank you for being here and listening to this today. I hope you found it interesting, and I look forward to seeing you for the next session.